Well, hello and welcome back. So, last episode I added color palettes or color palette system to the game, but no color palettes nor a way to control them while in game. So when I was editing the thumbnail, I thought this scheme looked really good. I raised the saturation and hue all the way to the one side, so I thought that scheme looked good, and then I added the black and white scheme. So what I started off here is I wrote the code, just inputted all the numbers for the second palette, and then just defaulted it to this one, so I could just test to see if it would work good within the game. And I like the color scheme here. Just placed a bunch of stone just to see all the different colors, see if it still works fine. Get the sky color in there. Now here comes the next theme. I thought the black and white scheme looked really nice too. Kind of, I don't know necessarily like a retro look, but I think it just looks really suiting just to have this black and white scheme. You might be able to make some good, interesting art using it. So I'm just throwing down the water, throwing down the plants. They look pretty good in that black, and then you burn it and it looks also pretty neat. It's very dull and just a perfect art style for the game. Now the next step was to add some code so I can switch between it and the game, which is F2. And then I noticed that the sky wasn't changing colors and it starts out a weird stage. And that's because when I wrote the code, Canvas only updates the background on curation. So when you just initially start the game, it sets the background color to whatever. So here I just edit the piece of code. I just paste it into every time you update your color palette. It also updates the sky, and then I noticed that the main world was green for sky color, which it should not be. So I think soon I go back into the color palette, see in the green, when you burn stuff, it's really hard to see what you're doing, plus the sky isn't green on a normal day. So what I end up doing is I go back to where I set the canvas originally to the original color, and then I put in to the palette skybox, which fixes it right up. So the game's kind of laggy here. I think it's an issue with the original trees when they render. I think they don't detect that they should grow, so you have to re-render them all in. Because it seems like the bug goes away whenever I go by, but I'm just changing the colors real fast here. Hopefully it's not a seizure warning. So the next thing I start working on here is the save system. So in my original game I did have a save system so you could go through, and in my clustering algorithm, how I render all the sand, I put everything into a compressed form anyways. So what I do is I just convert that to text. So it just takes the starting position, takes the ending position, and then it continues for the height of the screen, or the height of a chunk. Okay, so I just threw in the code for save game and also the Shift S. I'm using Shift S because I already have Shift commands. I will eventually switch it to Control S, but when I hit it, the game like almost instantaneously freezes up and wants to close. And I was kind of like thinking why the heck is this happening? I wait a little bit, still nothing happens. After quitting out of the program, I did notice that it did create the file, so it is calling it. It just can't finish the process, and I'm kind of wondering why at this point. Changing the code, I completely redid the save system, made it so it's more object oriented, so the save system is inside of the sand object itself. But I did another update here because it's still crashing, it won't continue through. So I start printing out all of the different values. So in here I start printing out all the values, and then I notice that each one of those X's has a position, which shouldn't happen. All of those should be individually scraped by themselves. So now I need to figure out why my clustering algorithm isn't working. I decided to print all of the data that's held within the clusters, and if you look really close there, you see each one of those X's, the Y, and then it has a length of 1 and an ID of 0, so it's not clustering anything, everything's individual, which can't happen. Okay, I just figured out why it wasn't working. I was calling the wrong algorithm. So now it saves. You can see it pauses for like a split second and then goes back to normal. So it's almost instantaneous saving. I do it twice here, and then I go back to the console, and then you can see down there I have it open up the world file. It now actually has a size. You can see all the different things there. So you can see all the save. Now it's time to make it so the player can now load the worlds. Okay, it's time to add the loading system, so it's going to hit Shift O and immediate crash. And that's because, remember kids, always subtract 1 from lengths when you're indexing through lists, because you will overflow and you'll crash. Took me a little bit to find that out, but now I have my new world open, and when I hit Shift O, I'm going to hit it here in a second, I think, maybe. No, glitching through the game, goes black screen, okay. Game's loading, hit Shift O, it overlayers everything because I forgot to account or save error. So error space is very important on saves because if you overwrite something in the error and then hit save, or it won't detect it and it'll just overlap it like it just did here. So now it's time to save error as well. Okay, so I looked through the code, I was just not including error, I commented out 4 lines of code, tested it here, it still did not delete the error, and that's because when I looked back in the code there was 2 more ands that I just missed. So then it starts clearing out the error, so this next frame here is I am practicing with the newest version, and then it does save the error, except it does have issues with error blocks. So inside of that plant, if I do it, you can see that it flattened out the curve. That's because it's not saving its starting position properly. So if anything is in the air, it immediately loses that value. You can kind of see how the bush is all square there. It took me a second to actually realize that happened. Currently I'm stumped on how to figure this out, but since this video was uploaded, I did figure it out sometime, so I guess I'll flash forward to when that happens. This took me a lot longer than it needed to, and it's all because I was editing the wrong code. So I'm just deleting that code down there. I don't use that anymore in my engine, so I might as well clean up my code. So I just needed to delete a few things where it wasn't saving the last preference if it was equal to 0. So now it does save that. We're launching the game here. Okay, now that we're in, we're going to draw some sky squigglies because that's the main thing. We're going to hit save. Saving does take longer now because it's got to save more data, but in the long run this is going to be better. So then now I can remove the sky squigglies and then do Shift O, and then all of this will reappear. And then here I am just messing with the sand, just reloading it because it's so fast to reload everything. Saving still takes a lot of time. There could be a few optimization steps, but since I have the color palette all set up, I think I'm going to add a lighting system. So just have my basic code there where I have the light goes up to 16, and then the light goes into a part of the color object, so then each color can have its own light level. So you can easily just change it based on an index value. Launch the game here, and I also added a day and night cycle. So as this loads, you can kind of see that it slowly changes color over time. This is faster than it's going to be in the actual game, because obviously I don't want it to be going this dark this fast after just starting the game. But I do think it adds a little bit of interest to the game. Because there's also the weather cycle, which is really rare, but I have lots of plans for the rest of this game, where I think the next video after this one I'm going to try to introduce the biomes mechanic, because I do have biomes currently, but it's kind of jerry-rigged within one system when the terrain generates. I want to use open simplex noise and Java array lists instead of just Java arrays, just so I can store more information and have infinitely procedural worlds. And then have the save system would be a little bit faster because it's only going to save what you have rendered in the world instead of saving everything in the world. So then, thank you guys for watching this video. It's gonna run out the time, but please like, subscribe, follow me. I don't know.